The FBI is the most sophisticated law enforcement agency in the world, pursuing the most dangerous criminals. When a young girl is kidnapped in front of her own family, who takes a 10-year-old child in broad daylight? What kind of sick bastard does that? A former victim holds the key to the abductor's identity. That's what I said. Oh my God, that's him. That's him. The Bureau mobilizes. You have one mission, and that's to find her alive. FBI criminal pursuit. 3:30 a.m. 25-year-old nursing student Emily Harper leaves a friend's house and begins the short drive to her apartment. It's a rare break from her hectic life studying to be a pediatric nurse and working part-time. All I ever wanted to be was a nurse. That was my entire life. That was my entire purpose, was to be a nurse. As Emily approaches her neighborhood, she notices a gray van idling at a stop sign, and it had plenty of time to turn. And the fact that it was still sitting there and it hadn't proceeded through the intersection, I found very odd, and it just kind of raised the hairs on the back of my neck. Emily continues a few blocks before turning into her apartment complex parking lot. The van follows just behind. Emily sees the van stop. A man starts to walk towards her. I just glance and look at him, and he's just kind of early 20s guy. I'll smile at him, be nice, you know. Hey, excuse me, do you know Mark? When he gets close to Emily, he asks her if she knows the son of the janitor who works there. I say no. I turned my back and started walking faster up to the door. I got about 15-20 feet from the outer door, and then I hear running footsteps behind me. And then, that's when it finally hits me, something's not right. The man grabs her and presses a 6-inch blade to her throat. I was told, bitch, if you say anything, I'm going to kill you. And then he started marching me back towards the parking lot. We got a few feet, and he pulled out a pair of zip ties and he told me to put the zip ties on. I don't know where the stuff comes from, but what went through my head is act stupid. Really, I mean, how hard is it to put on a pair of zip ties? But I acted like I didn't know how to put on a pair of zip ties. The attacker gets one tie around Emily's wrist, then drags her towards his van. Something clicks with Emily. My purse kept falling off my shoulder and he just kept pushing it back on my shoulder. That little gesture made me know that he wasn't there to rob me. His intention was not to rob me. His intention was to kill me. It was very strange. It was as if everything had slowed down at this point. I had a thought that went through my head, and it was this girl, who'd been kidnapped in her just decaying body tied to a post in the middle of a field in a clearing. And that went through my head, and I didn't want to be that. For some reason it focused me. It made me think that if I was going to die, then I was going to do it there because I wanted at least for my family to be able to find me and to know where I was. Emily struggles furiously but can't break loose. He put his hand over my mouth and I started screaming. I started biting his hand. He had gloves on. She has only a split second to decide what to do. I was looking at my surroundings and thinking some of these cars are newer. Newer cars means car alarms. How do you set off car alarms? Well, sometimes, if you kick them hard enough, maybe you'll set off car alarm. So, I started kicking every car we came by, pushing off of every car. And at that point, that's when I decided, okay, well, I lose a few fingers. I don't care. I reached up and I grabbed the blade and I pulled down, pushed off of him and just fought with everything that I have. Bleeding and terrified, Emily tries one last desperate move. I just dropped and I dropped dead weight. Still had the one zip tie on, so he dragged me by the other one across the parking lot. At that point, I was creating as much noise as possible, and he just gave up. Give me that. He grabbed my purse and he looked at me and he said, bitch, you better run back to the building, and if you look back at me, I'll kill you. The man runs back to his van and tears out of the parking lot. Emily frantically bolts to a neighbor's apartment where she calls 911. Dallas, Texas police officer Michael Ruiz is the first responder on the scene. Miss Harper had one zip tie on her hand when we arrived, and you could tell visibly her arm was swollen from where he tried to drag her through the parking lot. In shock and still terrified, Emily gives the police as much information as she can. She described the van as an older gray-style van, but she didn't know if it was a Dodge or Chevy or a Ford. But it gave us enough information to have the other cars that were in the area looking for that vehicle. Officers put out an APB on the van and knock on neighbors' doors to see if they heard or saw anything, but they come up empty-handed. And the apartment complex doesn't have security cameras that might have captured more details. The forensic team removes Emily's zip ties and bags them. It's the only evidence they have. It was black. It was free. And at one point in time, she mentioned that he was wearing gloves. But there's a catch. Unfortunately, the zip tie that we recovered from her arm was unprocessable. Detectives forward the report to the Dallas, Texas Sex Crimes Unit, but the little information they have doesn't match a known perpetrator. That means an attacker is still on the prowl in Dallas with a blade and all of Emily's information. I didn't know where he was. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know his intentions. All my IDs, everything was in my purse. It was all gone. I didn't know if he was going to come back. She has good reason to be afraid. Emily's attacker will come back, and the skilled agents of the FBI will be racing to stop him. We felt a bit of desperation to find this guy and apprehend him and get him off the street before someone else fell victim to his craziness. November 5, 2002. It's been 8 days since a violent predator attacked Dallas, Texas nursing student Emily Harper. Police know a dangerous man is on the loose, but he's covered his tracks well. I was terrified. I couldn't return to my apartment building. I moved in with a friend of mine. I couldn't sleep. I could barely go to class. She was lucky to be alive. She fought him off. What's next? What's most available? What's easier? Well, a child. 4 miles away from Emily's apartment in Dallas's Oak Ridge neighborhood, 9-year-old Lily and 8-year-old Megan Carter are playing in their front yard. Their 14-year-old sister Brooke is keeping an eye on them. I got to go feed the baby. I'll be right back. Okay guys, got it. I was right there in the living room, right next to the front door with the front door open. It's like a hair mount in the front yard. The girl's mother, Karen Ellis, is at work, but believes her daughters are in good hands. I grew up in that neighborhood my whole life. I was born and raised there, so I knew everybody there, you know, from 20th Street all the way down to 15th Street. Around for 4:45 p.m. You guys ready for a snack? Can I run to the store? Brooke gives Megan permission to go to the corner convenience store to buy a snack. Hey, you want to come to the store with me? No, later. Megan scooters the 2 blocks to the store alone and buys some chips. What she doesn't know is that someone is watching her every move. Half a block from her house, a gray van is parked in her path. From the front of their home, Lily sees her sister pass the van. Hammy, she said that the door of the van was open. The driver door was open and she said the guy had to be laying down because she saw him get up from laying down position and he just grabbed her. The man pulls Megan into his van and jumps in, holding her down. Pammy, I hear Lily screaming, Brooke, somebody took Megan, and I might jump up and with the baby in my arms and ran outside. Somebody took Megan. Brooke tries desperately to stop the van. He took Megan, and I ran out in the middle of the street and as he came around the corner, the front end almost hit me. I stand there with my baby in my arms. I was able to see him holding her down in the forward of the van trying to fight to get up, and he kept pushing her down. He looked calm. He looked like he knew what he was doing. Scared me very much. I tried to run after her screaming and yelling. He took her that somebody stole my little sister. Oh, I haven't seen her. Just down the block, a neighbor is chatting with a friend when he hears Brooke and Lily shouting, help. Did you hear that? Go check that out. Alarmed by the screams, the neighbor starts his engine and races after the gray van. He catches up a few blocks away. The van was driving very erratically. He was driving in extremely high rates of speed, maybe 65, 75 miles per hour in busy rush hour traffic. The suspect clearly knew that he was being chased and did everything he could to lose the concerned citizen. When the van veers onto a highway, the neighbor floors the gas and manages to get next to the van. He happened to have a pad of paper and a pen. He recorded the license plate number. The abductor suddenly swerves onto an off-ramp. He darts through traffic, nearly causing an accident. The neighbor is forced to slam on his brakes. He watches helplessly as the abductor turns a corner. He could no longer keep up with him and he lost visual contact with him. The kidnapper has gotten away, taking Megan with him. Back at the house, a panicked Brooke has called her mother at work and told her what happened. I was like at a blank. I was stunned. I couldn't believe that this was happening to me, you know? I couldn't understand why somebody would want to take my child. Karen Ellis races home, arriving at the same time as Dallas, Texas police officers. Robert Klein, newly promoted to detective, has handled kidnapping cases before, but it's immediately clear that this case is different. When our officers showed up on the scene, we sensed the panic and the desperation and the severity of what had happened in the faces and in the words of the witnesses. Detectives have to ask Karen tough questions. She and Megan's father are estranged. It's clear he wasn't the driver, but could he have arranged for Megan to be kidnapped? Under normal circumstances, these abductions tend to involve other family members or there's some other explanation where a family member might have some information. Investigators press Megan's sisters for detailed information about what they saw. Told the police to me the van looked like a Dodge Caravan and that he had dark hair. Police need to find that van and fast. In 75% of child abductions, the victim is dead within 3 to 6 hours. But in this case, investigators get an unusual break. 911, what's your emergency? The neighbor who chased the kidnapper has a license plate number, Texas 280 for DFF3. The statistical likelihood of a safe recovery in these types of cases was low. Because we had a license tag number, we felt that we might be able to buck the odds and really make a break in this case before anything tragic could befall Megan. Records indicate the van is licensed to a landscaping company in Texas. But who is the driver? The business is closed for the day and there is no contact name in the records. Detectives can't afford to wait until the next morning. We're prepared to break into that business if we have to go through a Rolodex or look at somebody's desk to find a phone number. The urgency was that great. Officers raced to the landscaping office, desperate to find the name of the van's driver. But there's another concern. What if the abductor has taken Megan across state lines? They could be headed anywhere in the country. Police contact the one federal agency that can track violent criminals anywhere in the United States. The FBI. Special Agent Paul Grayson joins the case. The FBI is automatically going to be involved in any type of investigation relative to a missing child. In our case, the unique situation here is it is a federal violation if a child crosses state lines during an abduction. For Special Agent Lisa Bennett, the brazen nature of this abduction is particularly alarming. It was right in front of the victim's house and he grabbed her right off the street. It was late afternoon, plenty of light, other people out and about in the neighborhood, and he just didn't care who saw him or anything. There was definitely a no-holds-barred type atmosphere going on with all the police agencies involved. Whatever we got to do, find this girl. FBI agent Nathan Brooks and Dallas authorities scour the neighborhood near Megan's home. Someone had actually found a scooter in the immediate area and we thought we had a good lead there. If they were hers, maybe they would, she'd be close in the vicinity and they would find her. Take your time and make sure those aren't those. It's not them. They showed them to me and they wasn't hers. It just made the pain even worse. It made me more scared because I just didn't know where she was at. I didn't know anything about her and that's all I was going on was fear. The scooter is a dead end and investigators still haven't been able to track down the owner of the gray van. Megan's life hangs in the balance. This is not a normal case. This was an emergency. The life of this 8-year-old girl was on the line. Everybody knew it. And everybody was willing to make whatever decisions had to be made that night to identify who was driving the van because the clock was ticking. It's only been a few hours since a man in a gray van snatched 8-year-old Megan Carter as she scooted in front of her house. The FBI and local authorities urgently check out everyone close to Megan and her family, including her father. They learn he was at work at the time of Megan's abduction and has a solid alibi. I knew in my heart it wasn't nothing like that. I knew that it had to be a stranger abduction because nobody else would take her. If it would have been a family member, I wouldn't be standing there with the police. I would have been at their house. I would have been getting her back. This was a case of a true stranger abduction, and there was a sense of panic by I think everybody. The only lead investigators have is a description of the van and a license plate number provided by a neighbor who tried to chase down the abductor. The clock was ticking, and so with that information, all of our efforts had to be directed to finding out who owns the van, where are they, and who's driving the van. The task force blitzes the media with information about Megan, even though we didn't have a formal process in place. We did try to use the media in a way that we really hadn't used them before, which was to try to hit the both radio and television to get that information out to the public. The public responds with a grassroots effort to find the little girl. From the moment that this abduction hit the airwaves here in Dallas, it was the story from morning till night. This was the story that Dallas was talking about on all of the news channels, on radio. Karen Ellis goes on television around the clock, begging for her daughter's life. I love her, Perry. Mommy does get away. Please call Mom. I figured somebody would see something somewhere. Somebody had to notice something. Just have to jot somebody's memory to get the right lead. Everybody was looking for the gray van for Megan, and they're all concerned about a missing 8-year-old girl. It's not theirs, but yet it is. It's all of ours. That's our 8-year-old girl. The story is even more personal for one viewer, Emily Harper. She's still recovering from her attack just 8 days earlier when she hears the description of the suspect. Oh my God, it comes on the news. They're talking about this abduction of this little girl. Megan, that's him. And I hear something about a gray van. And that's him. That gets my attention. And then they start showing pictures and giving the description. And that's what I said. Oh my God, that's him. That's him. Emily notifies police that the suspect is the same man she fought off in the parking lot. The same man who threatened to kill her. I didn't stop him. And he went after an 8-year-old girl. That's what was going through my head. I didn't stop him, because a 25-year-old girl managed to fight him off. He goes after somebody smaller and somebody weaker who can't fight him off. Around 10 p.m., a call comes in from Plano, Texas, 20 miles north of Dallas. A couple reports that around 5:45 that evening, they had gone to their synagogue on the outskirts of town to do some maintenance. In the back parking lot, secluded from the road, they saw an unfamiliar gray van. They thought it a bit unusual. It's a small synagogue, small congregation. Neither of them recognized it, and they were curious enough that they wrote the license number down, then looked inside, and she inside observed what she described it as an quilt, multicolored quilt. The license plate is the same one Megan's neighbor wrote down earlier that day. Plano PD immediately sends a vehicle to the synagogue parking lot, but the van is gone. A search of the woods nearby reveals no trace of Megan. When they got there was no gray van, no Megan, and I'm right back at square one again. Where do we start now? Investigators are desperate to find the registered owner of the Dodge Caravan, but they have only been able to track down the name of a landscaping company in nearby Arlington, Texas, in the early hours of the morning. The task force finally locates the business owner. I personally went to his residence at about 3 o'clock in the morning. The man doesn't match the description of the abductor and he has a good alibi for the evening. But he does admit he owns the van and says he loaned it to an employee several weeks earlier. That employee's name is Brian Lawson. Brian Lawson matched the physical description of the abductor of Megan Carter. Investigators run a background check on Lawson. He has a criminal record for theft, resisting arrest, and battery on a peace officer. Brian Lawson had temporary jobs. Nothing long-term or stable, but did work, had a girlfriend, family. Authorities now have their prime suspect identified. The challenge is finding him in time to save Megan's life. We really moved into manhunt mode. Now the chase was on. Authorities head to Lawson's mother's house in Dallas, Texas, where he frequently stays. They search her home and spot a familiar item. The caretakers at the synagogue had reported seeing a quilt in the cab of the vehicle when it was parked behind their synagogue. And the officers, when they were at Brian Lawson's mother's house, immediately saw that quilt was very similar. And Brian's mother said that Brian had brought that into the house that belonged to Brian. Lawson's mother reveals that her son was at her house the night before, then left very late. Investigators interview the mother's neighbors and learn something even more interesting. Neighbors said that they saw Brian that night late at night, after 9 p.m. washing that gray van outside of his home, washing the van and washing his hands over and over. Could Lawson have been washing away evidence of a vicious crime? Before police can answer that, an urgent call comes into dispatch. A gray van has been spotted a few blocks from Lawson's mother's house. Police rush to the scene in hopes of finding Brian Lawson and Megan. Instead, they find the empty vehicle wiped clean. The keys were actually still in the van. We pretty much dismantled the interior of that van completely, looking for anything of evidentiary value. The interior had been cleaned well. Investigators don't find blood or signs of physical struggle in the van, but they do find a couple of short hairs underneath the seat similar to Megan's in color. Investigators are still determined to find Megan while she's alive, but getting to her and Brian Lawson has suddenly become more difficult than ever. Before they recover the gray van, that was something that we could look for. Now the problem is, was he driving? Who's he with? Where is he going? Where's he at? Driver, let me see your head. Here. It's been 24 hours since 8-year-old Megan Carter was abducted in front of her house. Authorities have the van of her kidnapper, Brian Lawson, but they have no idea where he is and whether Megan is alive or dead. Our collective desperation and the urgency, it was palpable. We were hoping against hope. Now, it's frustrating not being able to locate him. We knew who he was. We were just behind him. We were chasing him and he was doing a good job of hiding. Megan's family is in agony. I was beyond terrified. I really don't even know if I can explain the words of how I felt. As the night faded, I started getting more scared and more scared because it started getting chillier and I know she didn't have a coat and she hadn't ate. I wanted to grab her and hold her, I wanted to make sure she was safe and I couldn't cause I didn't know where she was at. Investigators cling to the hope that of the hundreds of tips pouring in from the public, one of them might lead to Megan. They need a break. And in the early morning hours of Friday, November 7th, they get it. A driver calls 911 to report a gray sedan speeding down Interstate 35. In it are a passenger matching Brian's description and an unidentified female. We were hoping that this is our guy, Brian Lawson, and maybe Megan Carter still. still with him and still alive. Police spot the vehicle and try to pull it over, but the driver speeds up. After a tense half hour, police force the sedan off the road. Karen Ellis is watching the whole thing live on TV. I sat there and watched it. I was hoping it was him. I was hoping that they had Megan in there. Turn away from me. Put your hands straight up on your knees. Let me see your hand. But neither Lawson nor Megan is inside. The couple was fleeing police for an unrelated offense. There was no sign of him, no sign of Megan. I was just back at lost hope again. I just got all kinds of things going through my mind. Not knowing, what he had done to her. Not knowing if she's alive or whatever. No answers, no clues, nothing. The task force continues to work through every lead that comes in from the public. One in particular disturbs them. A caller who worked as a day laborer for Brian Lawson reports that a few weeks earlier Lawson bragged that he had fantasies about raping and killing women. What he wanted to do to women, prostitutes, girls, very, very sick, very predatory, very abusive acts. He even mentioned that he would like to find a piece of land somewhere where he could have his way with these victims and dispose of them on this property that he had. There is no doubt in anyone's mind Megan is in dangerous hands. It did speak to his psyche and it did speak to a certain propensity that was evil and was dark. If he would do this so brazenly one time and we didn't stop him quickly, he would do it again and maybe again and again and again. Around 12:45 p.m. Sarah Jenkins, a clerk with the Dallas, Texas police, is driving near the Trinity River. She has spent the last 2 days helping on the case. I had produced a missing person poster on Megan. I had also produced the wanted poster on Brian Lawson. Sarah cruises slowly on top of the levee when she spots a man sitting below. His face was burning to my brain, and when he turned around I was shocked. Sarah is looking right at Brian Lawson. She is unarmed and has only seconds to react. She quickly makes up an excuse to speak to him. Hey, have you seen my dog? No, I haven't seen any dog. He said no, but would you come down and help me? And I said, well, what's wrong? And he said, well, I hurt my foot and my ankle. I said, okay, let me go turn around, Then I'll come back. Sarah speeds to a nearby construction site, hoping she can gather enough men to capture Lawson before he runs. If she can't, a violent predator will once again slip away, taking Megan with him. For 2 days, the FBI and local authorities have exhausted every lead in their search for Brian Lawson. Now, Sarah Jenkins, an unarmed police clerk, has stumbled upon him and is racing to get help. She recruits several construction workers who call the police, then slowly approach Lawson. And the construction workers themselves, they went down there and he could have had a gun. He sees them coming and tries to flee, but his leg was injured when he was on the run. So he finally gets out of the river and all the construction workers are standing around him in a circle and Brian Lawson sitting on the ground. He just kept asking, am I in trouble? I did hear that. Am I in trouble? The police and FBI arrive within minutes, followed by local news trucks. Lawson's arrest is broadcast live on Dallas television, watched by the thousands who have anxiously followed the story for 2 days. Lawson is flown to a nearby hospital where he's treated for a broken ankle and finally questioned about Megan. Investigators are frustrated. Lawson is arrogant and refuses to reveal what he's done with the little girl. Sexual predators like Brian Lawson, they derive pleasure and a sense of power by having that knowledge that nobody else has. And my guess is that even in the end when he's in handcuffs, he's at the hospital, he knows that he's caught. He knows that there's a good chance he's going to prison for the rest of his life or worse. He still probably had some sense of satisfaction in knowing that he knew where Megan was. We didn't. That was another big letdown. He wouldn't do nothing. He wouldn't tell him anything. It's hard, to know that he's getting treated and I still don't know where my daughter is. Investigators are determined to find Megan and beat Lawson at his own game. He would not be the person that got to keep Megan. One way or another, he would not win. There's definitely a chance that she's locked up somewhere. We don't know where she is. Is she by herself? Is she starving? We don't know. We don't know what her situation is. So, the search never slowed down at all. Agents, police officers, detectives, and volunteers focus on the river where Lawson was caught. The exhaustive search lasts late into the night, but they turn up nothing. They go over every piece of evidence they have and decide to revisit one more place they might be able to find Megan. They go back to the lot behind the Plano synagogue where Lawson's van had been spotted. This time they cover every square inch of land. More than 100 law enforcement agents line up side by side to walk deep into the woods. There's a lot of tree limbs and branches and high weeds and fences and it's just not an easy area to walk through. One of the FBI agents saw a piece of clothing and, as he got closer, he realized it was panties from a child. About 11:45 a.m., 3 days after Megan was abducted, a searcher notices a pile of branches under a tree in a field north of the synagogue. Underneath the nude body of a little girl, it is Megan Carter. The coroner determines Megan has been raped and strangled to death with a cord. She had likely been killed within an hour or two of her abduction. Something more that sticks with me after all these years working these cases is how horrible do you think it was for Megan? What a nightmare that was to be scootering to see your house. Only a few feet away is your sister and somebody comes out of nowhere and just grabs you and throws you in a van, pushing your head down, yelling and screaming. Can you imagine yelling for your mother or your father to help you out? That's her last thing that she saw on the face of this earth, was this human being doing that to her. How horrible is that? Investigators share the grim news with Megan's family. I seen him Nathan Brooks standing on my porch, the FBI agent, and when he come and see me the first time, he told me that if they find Megan, he would be back to tell me. So when I seen him standing there, I just had this gut-wrenching feeling that something was wrong. I looked at him and I said, "She's dead, isn't she?" And he had me sit down and he told me that they had found her body. And I lost it after that. I mean, I just couldn't do nothing but cry. I'm still numb of the thought that she's gone. She's laying in this casket and she's really not coming back. Brian Lawson is charged with 2 federal counts: aggravated kidnapping resulting in death and interstate travel to commit aggravated sexual abuse of a child resulting in death. He pleads guilty but shows no shame. The words he used in the courtroom were outrageous. He showed no remorse. I'll never forget his one comment about everyone thinks it's so hard to kill a child. It's not that hard. Brian Lawson is sentenced to death. He awaits his execution date in the federal prison in Leavenworth, Kansas. Those whose lives were changed by Lawson are left to carry on. I write every now and then inside of a journal when I feel down. I'm missing her. I love her and I miss her. Emotions are still there. I can still pull him up 15 years later. It doesn't leave you. It doesn't ever go away. It's on a constant reel inside your head. Emily Harper was so torn by her experience that she dropped out of nursing school. She is now a police 911 dispatcher. When I didn't have anybody and when I was alone, there were these police officers that cared, and they cared about Megan and her family, and they poured their heart and soul into that case and looking for that poor girl and finding her and finding Brian, and they did everything. And it broke their hurts, so I became a dispatcher and I spend every day now paying them back, and I do what I do every day to thank them. So now I have their backs.